I want to welcome you. I'm Dr. Marianne, founder of Step by Step Dyslexia Solutions. We're a nonprofit organization. We have a mission to help children with their literacy skills so they can realize their full potentials and positively give back to their communities. And we do this by training teachers, whether teachers receive a scholarship from us or whether they want to pay privately. We want to train parents and teachers to help dyslexic children. I want to ask you a question. How would your life be different if you couldn't read? Put that in the chat if you would. Okay. So I didn't learn about dyslexia when I was a teacher, nor did I learn it when I was in college. I had a professor friend recommend I join the International Dyslexia Association, of which I'm now a board member in the Tri-County branch. That's where I learned about Sam Orton and Anna Gillingham and their multisensory approach to teaching reading for students that had word blindedness. I also learned about the value of music to teach reading, and I've been using music for the past 15 years. And I didn't even learn about dyslexia. Well, I didn't even have an interest to teach until I was in my children's first and third grades. In the late 1990s, I was a room mom, and I saw those teachers teach in kinder and first grade, the reading, the writing, the phonics, and it was like a foreign language to me. But it really piqued my interest because I realized if these teachers weren't trained properly, they could really set these children on a wrong trajectory. Fortunately, my children had trained teachers, but it piqued my interest to go to school. I earned a credential and a master's, and I taught in the general classroom for a couple years, and I started noticing these bright students that couldn't read or write, and I just didn't understand it. So someone recommended I go get a special ed credential. And because a master's is a lot easier to get right after you get a credential, I got my second master's in special ed and taught in special ed for a while. I started a private practice, and one of the stories I have of a student in a low-income district who was an 8th grader, she was being raised by her grandfather because her mom was in prison. And he said he had tried everything for her, and he wanted to see how our program was with music. Well, after 2 weeks, he noticed a big difference in her attitude, her self-esteem, her confidence had improved. And he was impressed, and we were all excited to see what happened after 6 weeks. I post-tested her, and she had made 3 years gains in reading vocabulary, reading fluency, and reading comprehension. He started crying. He said, "This is a miracle. Our home used to be a battlefield. Now she gets along with us. She gets along with her peers. She enjoys going to school, and she does her homework." He asked me, "Are you a doctor?" Well, that was the confirmation I needed in my spirit to go back to school and get still another degree. I got my doctorate. It took me 7 years to get my doctorate, and I actually thought I was going to be a professor with it, but I was asked to teach middle school in Los Angeles. So I taught middle school for about 1.5 years, and then I worked at a district closer to my home for another 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And I just knew I had to get out of teaching. Math is what they had me teaching. So we developed a music app called Dunking Dyslexia. I developed a reading program, and that's how I equip heroic teachers with an effective literacy program to remediate dyslexia, so we can close the achievement gap, stop the school to prison pipeline, and prepare kids for success in school and in life. These are some pictures of my family. My 25-year-old daughter got married last year in November. These are my handsome sons, and this is my daughter's husband, and she's a blended family as we were. And here they are, the happy couple at the winery in Temecula. And my husband and I just celebrated 30 years of marriage in August. So what you're going to be able to do today, these are the learning outcomes. You're going to be able to describe dyslexia to others. You're going to understand what dyslexia feels like. You're going to understand the adverse impact of dyslexia on students. You're going to recognize dyslexia in a classroom and in the workplace, and you're going to understand ways to teach phonological awareness. Are you ready? Give me a hands up if you're ready for this. Yay! All right, we are ready. So glad you're here. So I'm going to give you this starting exercise. I want you to add these numbers. So if you don't have a piece of paper next to you right now, would you please try to grab one, because I'm going to have you do some simulations as well. If you have your paper, let me know how you add these numbers. And put in the chat what your total is. Yes, people are getting 55. Okay, good job. Okay, people are telling me how you add this. So let me ask you, if you used one of these methods, there's actually more methods than this. I added a 0 to the 10, and then I counted by tens, and I had a 5, so I had 55. People preferred adding by 11s to get to 55. Some people started from the beginning, and after every 3 digits, they would add another digit, and they would add that way, which got them to 55, and there were more ways. So the reason I did this exercise is there are many ways to teach and many ways to learn. Some are faster than others, some are more effective than others. So knowing the best strategies to help children with dyslexia is going to be very effective. Research shows us what these strategies are. And sometimes these strategies can be quite surprising. This is a sample of a 6th grade student's writing. This is what dyslexia looks like in the classroom. Does it look familiar? I'm going to read these sentences to you. The clam sat on the bottom of the ocean. Number 2, they rushed into the cottage in the nick of time. Number 3, we gathered around the campfire and told ghost stories. Number 4, Pittsfield has a population of about 50,000. Number 5, a conference was held to determine the future course of action. And number 6, I would love to share this mound of donuts with my cousin and you. Very typical of dyslexic children, there's no numbering of sentences, capitalization is missing, punctuation is missing, many letters are missing, syllables are missing, words are missing. Okay, next one. This is what dyslexia looks like in the workplace. I went to visit an elderly friend of mine in San Diego, and we paid for lunch for her husband and myself. And this cashier, had very good personality skills, so that's probably why they put her behind the register. But she was kind of disappointed she was there because she knew she couldn't spell, and she knew she had dyslexia, and her daughter has dyslexia. But she didn't spell dollars right. She didn't spell dining room correctly. Dollars is, messed up. And I helped her spell guest, which she corrected here, but I didn't want to overwhelm her with correcting all her words. But look here, this is really interesting. Lowercase for dining, uppercase for room. Usually students will uppercase the D and the B. I'm not sure why she uppercased room, but that is what it looks like in the workplace. So the formal definition of dyslexia by the International Dyslexia Association is that it's a specific learning disability. It's neurobiological in origin. It's characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. An easier way to say it is dyslexia is neurological in origin, so the brain can be retrained. It's more of a learning difference than a disability, and it affects students' reading, writing, and speaking. Can you say that? Easy way to describe it. This is a picture of Cruz. He was a second grader that came to us last March. He didn't even know his letter names and sounds. I trained a tutor to work with him. In July, he was ready to start my reading program. When you go into second grade, you can start my program that has music with it. So he started the program. He did so well. In March, he exited special ed for language arts. In fact, this is how the charter school assessed him after being in the program in March. So he's testing at a 4th grade reading level. When I assessed him, he showed the same, but additionally, 5th grade in his reading comprehension. When kids learn to read from 1st to 3rd grade, then they're ready to read to learn from 4th grade on. So when they learn to break the code, man, they start going quickly, and they know they comprehend better. And the music is bringing results in children. Okay, you're gonna have to hold on to your chair about this. 1 to 3 years gains in 6 weeks. That's right, 6 weeks in reading vocabulary, fluency, and or comprehension. I've been seeing those kind of improvements over 15 years, which is why I got my doctorate. So I want you to do this first dyslexia simulation. On your piece of paper, okay, here are the instructions. Remove every second vowel in the word, if there is one, and rewrite those words. So here's an example. Laughter. The second vowel, you're going to cross it out, cross out the U, and then rewrite it without the U. So this is what it looks like, laughter. Okay? Go ahead and do these sentences. Okay, so I know this is very strenuous on the brain. This is what it's like for a dyslexic child. Here are the answers. And give me a chat in the chat box if your words match this pretty closely. So what I like to share with people is that when you use highlighters, you're going to really help your child or student. You'll have them underline the word that has 2 vowels, and then take another highlighter, highlight that second vowel. So ways you can help your student is use the highlighters, give very clear, explicit information. How many of you enjoyed that exercise? Give me your raised hands. Pretty different for a lot of people. Good job. Okay. So true or false? Give a thumbs up if it's true and give a thumbs down, but actually you're going to write in the chat box, okay? Write in the chat, and be sure you chat to all participants. Okay, here's your first question. True or false? 4th graders in Los Angeles are reading better than the national average. Put your answer in the chat. Thank you for responding. A lot of people are responding. That is false. 4th graders in California test far below the national averages. Los Angeles students are the lowest of California, or among the lowest. 66% of students who fail to reach grade level reading by 4th grade rarely catch up. Often they drop out of high school, end up going to prison, or on welfare. I'm going to use the acronym COPS as I present today because it's going to be easier for you to take notes, and I hope you share this with somebody. I put Danny Trejo's picture in there because he's someone who got his life turned around in prison, but we don't want our kids going to prison, okay? We want to save them that. So I use COPS because when I worked at middle school and high school, we had a cop on campus, and it was scary for kids to see the cops on campus. Comforting for the teachers, scary for the kids. So C stands for crisis. We have a national reading crisis. In spite of a mandate by Governor George Brown in California, October of 2015, we were supposed to assess for dyslexia and provide intervention by the 2017-18 school year. Well, that hasn't been done. Schools are only now starting to even say dyslexia and talk about it. They're not really sure who's in charge. Is it the psychologist, the speech pathologist, the English chair? So there's an organization called the National Association of Educational Progress. They give us an annual report card at the 4th grade and 8th grade levels. So for 4th graders have dropped 1 point, 8th graders have dropped 3 points. And if you might think, well, that's not really a lot. Well, we're going in the wrong direction. We shouldn't be dropping. Let me ask you a question. Raise your hand if you ever received a C- in a class and you were so relieved to get a C- because it meant you passed and you never have to see that class again. How many of you fall into that category? Okay, a lot of you. Okay, so now raise your hand if you ever received a C- in a class, but there were additional levels to that class and you were always behind because other people had B's and C's and you wish you would have received a higher score. Were you that C- student? I've been there too. Well, our nation sees a C- as proficient. Okay, so now look at this chart. Proficient is 280. Look where the bar is. It's way below 280. Proficient here, 280. Look where our students are. We are at the D+, D- level. Okay, next slide. True or false? Enter into the chat box. 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. Okay, also raised hands is good. True. 85% of students in special ed under specific learning disabilities have dyslexia. Had you ever thought of that? Students in general ed also have dyslexia. 2/3 of the students who fail to reach grade level reading by 4th grade could end up dropping out of high school, could end up in prison, could end up in welfare. This is the statistics. 2/3 of these students will. So what if we could train these students to read in the 1st and 3rd grades? What if we could exit them out of special ed because they can read? We could build their self-esteem, give them some hope for their future, and what a better use of our taxpayer dollars. Here's a second dyslexia simulation. Okay, on your piece of paper, here's the instruction. Change every T to a D, and then change every E to an I, and rewrite those words. So here's an example. So the word there, change the T to a D, and the E, there's 2 E's, change that to I. Here's the new word, dearie. Okay, so take a minute and look at this paragraph and follow those instructions on your paper. This one's a lot harder, isn't it? So imagine the students who don't have the letters don't make sense to them. This is what it would look like. How did you do? Raise your hand if you did pretty well with this. So again, I want to just let you know, when you have highlighters that will help the child highlight the words, highlight the second letter, it'll help them follow the instructions so much easier. That's one of the tips that we have to helping children. So in our acronym COPS, the O stands for opportunities. We can provide our students with great opportunities because Sam Orton and Anna Gillingham, who were the pioneers of this back in the late 1930s and 40s, they told us that children with word blindedness, which is what it was called back then, needed a multisensory approach to reading. In the late 1960s, the International Dyslexia Association was formed, but these two spawned the International Dyslexia Association. So kids need a multisensory reading program. I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you read better, learn better when you're seeing something? Raise your hand. How many of you learn better when you're hearing something? Books on tape, people explaining to you. How many of you learn better when you have hands-on? I just need to do it and then I'll learn it. Right, okay. So I'm going to ask you, when you're talking to a friend about a problem, how many of you solve your own problems just by talking? All of us use different modalities. Some of us use all of these modalities. What you're doing is you're working to a student's strength as well as to their weakness. So while this kind of teaching works well for all students, dyslexic students need this. That's what Sam Morton, who was a neurologist, learned, and Anna Gillingham was a psychologist and a teacher. And they also said that teaching had to be explicit, it had to be structured, systematic, sequential, and cumulative. And we have structures and systems in our daily routines. Why wouldn't we have them in reading? Here are some people you will maybe recognize. Maybe you've heard, these are the people that have dyslexia: Tom Cruise, Tim Tebow, Albert Einstein, Cher, Walt Disney, Steven Spielberg. Now, Mona Lisa, we don't know if she was dyslexic, but Leonardo da Vinci was. He's one of my favorites. He invented so many things, and he was an artist. The Fonz. I don't know if you know Patricia Polacco. She was dyslexic, and she wrote a book. Thank you, Mr. Fokker. And Erin Brockovich wrote a book, The Pelican Brief. So dyslexic people are very bright. They're very creative. So by retraining their brain, we're not getting rid of their creativity. We're just helping them read. And I run into people all the time who are adults who are dyslexic. Well, they say, I'm so glad there's someone like you helping children because their self-esteem was so beat up when they were little. So that's what we want to do, address dyslexia when the kids are young. I want to show you this brain image, the jobs of the left and right hemispheres. Right here on the left, you'll see is the language center. And on the right, the music awareness. And I'm going to show you this because it ties into the app that I developed. True or false? Write in the chat, 88% of juveniles in the juvenile court system in California have dyslexia. And people are raising their hands and writing in the chat. That is true. I have a professor friend who teaches criminal justice. He told me at the university, and he told me when he worked for the Department of Justice back east, there was a state that looked at the illiteracy rate of third graders to determine how many prisons to build. So I don't know if you know this. What is this? Hold on. Our prisons in California bring in $42,000 per inmate. Our general ed students will bring their school districts $13,000. Special ed will bring twice that, $26,000 for a special ed student. Now, isn't it a wise move to use our money differently? Train these kids while they're young? Here is a dyslexia simulation number 3. I'm going to give you some time to read this paragraph, and I want you to chat in the box how you like it, what you think about it. Okay, people are raising your hands. Thank you. Means you're finishing. Okay, so I'm going to show the next slide. This will surprise you. Now imagine you were the student that had auditory processing delay and you didn't hear the teacher's direction or instruction because you were thinking of the previous thing the teacher said. Or you were one of those students who ran to go to the bathroom, you wanted to avoid reading, so you missed instruction. Or you really had to go to the bathroom and you missed instruction. Now I want you to read this paragraph again. And feel free to take pictures with your phone of any of this because we need to share this with people. Just let them know you got it from Dr. Cintron. Isn't this a whole new experience, reading when you have a topic, when you understand what the teacher wants? So teachers need to write directions on the board. They need to give a peer buddy because if a student misses something, the dyslexic student just won't look next to them and catch up. They need someone assigned to say, this is what we're doing, and just a peer tutor, get the help. When I first read this story, I didn't know how to understand it, if it was a creative person, a dyslexic person. They seemed to have some really good ideas, but they were all over the place. So anyway, when you have a topic, it makes so much more sense. So the P stands for prisons. Again, I want to let you know, research shows that 2/3 of the people who are not reading by 4th grade will end up on welfare or in prison. We have 88% of our inmates are illiterate, but illiteracy is because of dyslexia. This is research that I found for Texas. 80% of their prison inmates are illiterate. And I told you what prisons cost. So that's pretty amazing. Okay, so true or false? Put in the chat box, or raise your hand if you prefer. Dyslexia has been known to cause ulcers in children. That is a big true. Students with dyslexia experience such anxiety. I had a parent tell me that her daughter had a dyslexia-induced ulcer. And I had another parent tell me that her son, when he was 10, he confessed that when he was 8 years old, he used to make excuses to go to the bathroom because he didn't want to read. And they thought he had a bladder infection. And week after week, they were taking him to the doctor and he didn't find anything. It was because he didn't want to read. So what does success look like? Reading success. What does it look like in your home? If you don't have children, do you remember going to the library, having so much fun with all those books? And if you have children, do you remember taking them? They would bring back a dozen books, read to you over and over and over again, and they could hardly wait to get back to the library and get more books. Well, that's not the reality of a child in a dyslexic home. Like I said, dyslexic children will often make excuses to not read. They'll go to the bathroom, they'll have a stomach ache, they'll just be away from their chair. Sometimes that's where that bad behavior could be coming in. So dyslexic children will memorize words, which means when they're reading, they're going to glance and guess. But whoa, give them an unfamiliar word, and what happens? All their peers start helping them read. Does that make them feel good or bad? They hate it. They don't like to feel dumb, and they feel dumb when they can't sound those words out. And then I've even been guilty as a teacher, help the student read. Well, that doesn't help their self-esteem either. They need to learn how to read and do it on their own. So Dr. Roger Sperry is the neuroscientist behind my doctoral research. He was someone very popular for his split brain theory in the 1960s for seizure patients. He severed the corpus callosum of the brain, and he worked with the left and the right sides of the brain independently. And he saw the seizures stopped and the people could be successful. And he said, if educators could ever take this information into the classroom, we'd have some breakthrough with this word blindedness. Well, in the 1980s, he won a Nobel Prize for his findings. And so this is what I base my reading program on. We have an app called Dunking Dyslexia that sends music in the left ear that's going to cross over to the right side of the brain. Remember, that was the music side. And then the app has spelling exercises that go in the right ear, and it crosses over to the left side of the brain. And it gives the brain something it likes to do, like Pilates of the brain. So imagine this. Imagine a dyslexic person is reading from the wrong side of the brain. They're reading from the right side of the brain. So the right angular gyrus wants to send over calp instead of clap, or farm instead of from. It wants to send spot instead of stop. That could get a kid in trouble. So when you send music in the left ear, it's going to cross to the right side of the brain, giving it a job it likes to do. It's not going to take over the reading. That's the dynamic of this neuroscience of music with phonics. I tell you, kids are making progress in 6 weeks or 12 weeks. What age do you think students start rhyming? Think about it. Preschool. So a lot of children are learning rhymes with nursery rhymes. This is, of course, the old 33s. But structured language begins in preschool, and rhyming demonstrates the connection between sounds and the written word. And then Sam Orton also said explicit reading instruction gives the student the ability to carefully decode the words that can be difficult for dyslexics. And the research shows accompanying music helps with the cognitive, gives them a cognitive advantage. And it accelerates success. One more bit of research here. At Stanford University, they address music with kids with ADHD. I had a student that said that he was adopted, and he was a middle school student, and he kind of was proud that he had ADHD and he was dyslexic. And he said, the Ritalin helps my ADHD, but the music helps me learn. This young middle schooler had music written into his IEP, and he kept it all the way through high school, and he graduated with beautiful grades. So a lot of teachers will let the students listen to music in the left ear, which will help the ADHD and their wandering attention. This is the data from my doctorate research. I had 2 internal review boards. They wanted me to do my research over 12 weeks because 6 weeks was just unprecedented. So this is after 12 weeks. All the students came to me. They were at risk, a few special ed, but all of them were at risk in the 10 to 20 percentile range. Students that used only the phonics program achieved the 40 percentile range, but the students, I split them half and half, those with the music achieved the 60 percentile range. So imagine 70% is your C. So this is after 12 weeks. What we offer the students is a 6-week challenge to improve your grades, 1 to 3 grades. So this was the data that I had from 15 years ago when I brought the reading program to 5 low-income school districts. These kids were in a reading program just 6 weeks. I have a student who was in my summer school program at a private school. His mother came to me in a different district. She was going to sue her district because he was going to be entering 6th grade and he was still reading at a low 3rd grade level. After 6 weeks, he had made 3 years gains in reading vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. She didn't have to sue her district. He mainstreamed in the special ed class in middle school. And the awkward thing was she worked for the school district, so she didn't want to sue them and she didn't have to sue them. So I published a book. My doctorate research is in here, A Message of Hope, How Music Enhances Reading for Dyslexic Students. It's got 17 case studies of students I worked with music and without music. It should be in the hands of every teacher and every parent who works with dyslexic children. Science and history teachers have dyslexic kids in their classrooms too. So this book will show them what it looks like and give them some tips of what they can do to help these students. And if school districts purchase this, they get a good discount from the distributor, Ingram Distribution. So what about the negative self-talk that you hear of dyslexic children? You hear their frustrations. They say, I'm dumb. I'm going to just quit trying. Have you ever heard a teacher tell a student you're lazy? True or false? So put it in the chat. A vast majority of teachers have been given specific training on how to help dyslexic students. False. Only a small percentage of teachers are really trained to work with dyslexic children. Teachers in grades 1 through 3 are trained to teach reading, but maybe not this way. I remember teaching 3rd grade, and I was given a bunch of books on the shelf, and I was told, create a program, second language learners. So these are the sentences that we have 2nd through 4th graders write. We do a pre-test of writing so we can see where their challenges are, because that's part of the eligibility for dyslexia is writing deficits. These were the sentences I read to you for 5th grade and older. And then we have students read unfamiliar words, and we call them nonsense words. So I'm going to share with you how we would pronounce them. We have bear, blut, zame, vust, Raoul, Ser, Nern, Came, Any, Vape, Plap, Boy. Okay, that's just an example of it. If even adults aren't familiar with the phonics, don't think you're dyslexic just because you couldn't pronounce those. That's not necessarily the case. But when students are taught to read, they're taught grammar and phonics rules. So they know this is a long A with a silent E. And they know the PL would go together. The L doesn't go at the end of the word. I have another true and false for you. Effective intervention can make a huge difference in the lives of students. And wouldn't you like that effective intervention? Yes, true. So using an Orton-Gillingham method with music and my research-based step-by-step reading, students are making 1 to 3 year gains in only 6 weeks. We're looking at vocabulary, reading fluency, and comprehension. When I test students that have low intelligence, but they seem like they'd be really bright, their vocabulary is very low. So when we start developing vocabulary, their intelligence increases. So I believe in lifelong learning. I received a grant of $2,500 to attend the Academy of Orton-Gillingham Practitioners and Educators. I'm going to receive the associate level course certification just to let schools know I can be training their teachers coming on campus. So these are this is what you've learned. Raise your hand if you can describe dyslexia to others now. Raise your hand if you understand what dyslexia looks like and the impact it can have on students. And raise your hand if you know how you can recognize dyslexia in the classroom. That's right. I'm so glad you guys learned this. So tomorrow, we have 2 learning outcomes. You're going to understand how to teach phonological awareness, and you're going to learn the Orton-Gillingham Model for reading. And when someone says, I teach to the Orton-Gillingham Model, you can know that they're doing the same methodology. It's not a curriculum, it's a methodology. And you're going to see how my program follows that Orton-Gillingham methodology. So here is our time for questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I just want to share these teamwork pictures. And the picture, imagine in 2015 when the Assembly Bill was signed, the corn was ripe. Now it's harvest time. It's time to, do what we have. And remember, my favorite movie is A Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. So we've built it. I want to help you. And the way we help dyslexic children is to train teachers. So I'm going to stop my share right now. Hello. And in the chat, I'm going to let you ask some questions. So the name of the app is Dunking Dyslexia, and you can buy it on your Android or your iOS. It's on iTunes. When you go through my training, I'll talk about my training that I offer for those of you who want additional training. I'll talk about that tomorrow, and the app is free for 2 months if you go through the training. So this will absolutely help elementary school, middle school, and high schoolers. I even had an attorney tell me that she was training herself with the Orton-Gillingham Model because she had dyslexia. So another question. Put all your questions in the chat because I will be saving the chat and I will email you your answers if we don't answer it today. If the schools don't assess for dyslexia, the parents need to write a letter and request the child be assessed for dyslexia. It's part of Ed Code. It's Ed Code 56335. And some insurances will actually pay for it if a person wants private care. But the Assembly Bill was Assembly Bill AB 1369. And again, the Ed Code is 56335. It's Ed Law, okay? So one of the questions I've had is, how do we implement this in the schools? Yes, that's the Ed Code for California. But all the states have their own Ed Code. Well, no, the Ed Code is for the nation, but California has the Assembly Bill different. So people have asked, how do you implement this in a school site? We are looking at the students in the after-school programs. We are assessing those students and giving them 6 weeks or 25 to 30 sessions with the reading program. It takes an hour a day, and some of these students are in these after-school programs until 6 o'clock because their parents are commuting to work and back. So It would be ideal if the schools would allow the teachers to be trained and be able to pull the students out 4 days a week for just an hour a day. That would be ideal. But the teachers aren't able to work after school at their lower rate because teachers make a certain kind of salary. Okay, so to help students, you do not need a degree. Well, a high school degree, yes. But I have trained college students to work with, when I did my research, when I did my intervention, my private practice 15 years ago, I used college students who were freshmen, sophomores. I used substitute teachers who were out of work. And I even use retired teachers. A lot of teachers retire early, they get frustrated with the system, but they still want to be engaged and they still want to help students. So with this COVID happening with us right now, this is a perfect opportunity to get trained and be able to tutor students online. And it could open up some side work for people if you really have compassion to help these struggling readers and really have compassion to keep those students out of prison. You're going to want to learn more about tomorrow and then learn about my training. So here's another question. The book can be purchased on Amazon, and the app is on your Android or your iOS, Dunking Dyslexia. And let me see. Yes, you can go to my website and click on the book and it'll take you right to the ordering page. My website is dyslexia-solutions.com. There's no prices or curriculum prices on my website though. You got to come tomorrow to find out about that. So I don't offer the training for preschoolers. Interestingly enough, I did have some webinars that you can find on my website for preschoolers. I didn't have the interest in comparison to the interest to help dyslexic children. Whew, 10 times is great. So I'm focusing on helping the dyslexic children. But go to my website and look at the preschool webinars that I have on YouTube, and that'll really help you. Okay, Dunking Dyslexia is the app again. So another question people ask me is, what kind of music do you use? I use classical music. So I recorded 28 spelling exercises, and I sent a sound engineer 28 classical bits of music that he married together on this web app. So you'll hear music in the left ear, spelling exercises in the right ear. And I recorded 8 sentence groups. So when students do use the app, it's the culminating exercise of 9 steps. So I don't recommend it for kids who have dyslexia because they need to learn the phonics rules to write the words. But if you know of students who are getting C's and B's and want to raise those grades and they know phonics, the app would be great to give them practice this summer in. Okay? And it's really interesting. When I drove up to Idaho this last week, we were listening to a speaker and he talked about stringed instruments and how they resonate with the body because we have so much water in our body and so much water in our brain. And I went, stringed instruments, the harp, the piano, the different instruments that is in this classical music. It's real special for the students. It's really special for the brain. When I taught middle school and high school individually, privately, I did have students that wanted their own playlist. They didn't want to listen to classical music, so you pick your battles for middle school and high school. I let them listen to their playlist, but I always listened to the music first to be sure it was not too loud and to be sure the words didn't overtake the melody, because you don't want your students getting distracted. And even in the classroom, if they're listening to music, you don't want them rocking out. They're going to lose their privilege of using music in the classroom. So I'm real happy everybody who started with me is still with me. So you've heard the whole presentation. Any more questions? So the webinar is free tomorrow. If you signed up for today, I automatically signed you up for tomorrow. So I'll be sending you a reminder link tomorrow as well. How many of you are interested in hearing more about the training? So I've been on other webinars where people have given me so much information that because it's in my wheelhouse, I was able to create stuff on my own when they teach me maybe something technical or something. So you're going to have that same opportunity tomorrow. I'm going to give you a lot of information, and if it's in your wheelhouse, you may be able to create something that'll work for you. But if you want that extra opportunity to be trained for a full day training, you're going to have that as well. Okay. And if you have any questions about your own children who are dyslexic, please put them in the chat. I've had people ask me about developmental dyslexia, genetic dyslexia. So dyslexia does have a genetic component. If you're trying to get your child to get tested for dyslexia at their school, and your husband is dyslexic or uncles are dyslexic, brothers dyslexic, that is a sure sign, sure evidence that they will assess your child. And children who haven't been given those early language opportunities, preschool, having their parents talk to them and read to them and play with them, and then they go into school and they start memorizing words like sight words. So those sight words go right to the right side of the brain like a picture. They're not developing the language center on the left side of the brain. That's our developmental dyslexia. So these kids can be remediated and retrain the left side of the brain. Remember, it's not a disability, it's a learning difference. And I'm retraining myself on other areas in my life. So the brain has so much plasticity to it, and it's just nice to know we can retrain the brain. So I love that you're very interested. I don't always have your name with your comment, so be sure you put your name with your comment, and then when I look at my chat, I can email you and get right back to you, okay, and answer any other questions. Some people are very private about their children having dyslexia. Feel free to talk to me, though. And the book, again, is called A Message of Hope, How Music Enhances Reading for Dyslexic Children. You can go on Amazon and just look for A Message of Hope, Dr. Marianne Cintron, and it'll pop up, or you can go to my website and you can see it on my website. Wow, someone said somebody was in jail 6 times. Past this now, somebody in, you know, I'm trying to get this program into the jails, into the foster homes for kids who are transitioning out of foster care. Just waiting for those right connections to do that. So what I do is I write grants, and I recently received a grant from a local community, so we're going to start training teachers and working with some kiddos. But I also write grants. So if you want to be on my list to be the recipient of a scholarship, let me know that. And I write grants for different communities, so those funders will fund that community. So registration for tomorrow, if you're on this, you're already registered because I did it for you. And people who registered for tomorrow, I put on today because sometimes schedules change up and people are available. But you could tell your friends that it's on Eventbrite, Slam Dunking Dyslexia, if they want to come tomorrow. Love to have them join us. Any more? So someone is commenting that the district is very far behind. We are as a nation. We're very far behind as a nation. You can let your districts know that I come in and I can give your district this webinar. I can give a 2-hour training. I'm available to help. And let me see. Let's order. So I am the affordable alternative to what the schools have. One of the superintendents said, this is so expensive to test all these kids for dyslexia. Well, I can give them an assessment. I've been working with dyslexic kids for 15 years. We give a cognitive test, we give a reading test, and we give a writing test and a phonological awareness test. So I can assess students for dyslexia at a very affordable price. And the intervention is also a very affordable price. I train a teacher in 1 day, and that teacher is going to be working with thousands of kids over her or his lifetime of teaching. So it's a very affordable alternative. Some of the programs are 3 years at the universities. And if somebody wants to use my program as a warm-up to be and get the additional training at the college, that's wonderful. We can get started right away with just an hour of training. So if you want me to assess your child, just let me know your name and I'll look up your email address and I'll communicate with you. And I can assess students online with COVID. So no matter where you are in the world or across the nation, I'm here to help you. Okay. Okay. So there's different tools that people are using to assess students. I have tools that I could only purchase because I have my master's in special education. So that might clarify something for you. If you have your master's in education, you can order curriculum to assess students. I use the PPVT and the GORT, which is the Great Oral Reading Test. And I also have the CTOP. Okay, any more questions? These are wonderful questions. What music chords do I do? Well, I'm not a music teacher, so I don't know. Just listen to classical music is what I'm recommending. So if you want to be part of the scholarship award, just give me your name. Okay, so I will let you know prices tomorrow. We are at the hour. I want to thank you all for being here. We're going to sign out. I'm Dr. Marianne Cintron, founder of Step by Step Dyslexia Solutions. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye, and God bless you.